The night burned with a savage glow, torches casting long shadows against the jagged cliffs of the northern shores. Smoke curled into the heavens, blotting out the stars as screams echoed in the distance. Villages that once stood proud now lay in ruin, their bones consumed by fire. The war bands had come, merciless raiders with hatred in their hearts and steel in their hands. Following them stalked a figure clad in blackened leather and fur, his presence cutting through the chaos like a blade. A mane of stark white hair crowned his head, and his eyes gleamed in unnatural gold. He was a hunter, a predator, born of frost and fury, sent to avenge the fallen village. They called him Fenric, the White Wolf. Fenric moved through the charred remains of the fishing village, his silver sword dripping with the blood of those who had dared to cross him. His nostrils flared, catching the acrid scent of burning wood mingled with the iron tang of blood. His prey was close. The band of raiders he pursued had fled inland, abandoning their plunder in a desperate bid to escape. They knew who hunted them, and they knew the tales. The White Wolf would not stop until justice was done. Fenric had once been a man like any other. He had loved, laughed, and lived beneath the warm sun. But those days were gone, stripped from him by a cruel twist of fate. His family had been slaughtered by marauders under a blood-red moon, their screams forever etched into his mind. Left for dead, Fenric had clawed his way back to life, swearing an oath of vengeance. He had sought out the elders of the Frozen Circle, an ancient order that wielded powers beyond mortal men. They had remade him, fusing his soul with the essence of a wolf. It was a gift, they claimed, but Fenric knew it was truly a curse. His senses were sharper than any blade, his strength unmatched. Yet he paid the price with his humanity. His golden eyes betrayed him, marking him as something other, something monstrous. He embraced it. Steadily, he tracked his prey through the dark forest. His ears caught the faint crunch of boots on frostbitten leaves. His lips curled into a feral grin. The raiders were camped in a glade, their fire a feeble defense against the cold. Fenric crouched in the shadows, the wind carrying their voices to his keen ears. He moved quietly towards their encampment. "Do you think he'll come?" one of them asked, his voice trembling. "He's a ghost, you fool," another spat. "The White Wolf isn't real, just a story to scare children." The raiders had left a trail of death and destruction in their wake. Villages burned, families butchered. They called it war, but Fenric called it cowardice. He had seen enough blood spilled in his lifetime to know the difference between conquest and cruelty. He slipped through the underbrush, silent as snowfall. One of the men moved to relieve himself near a tree. Fenric struck without hesitation, a flash of silver slicing through the night. The man crumpled to the ground, his lifeblood steaming in the cold air. The others barely had time to react before the White Wolf was among them. His blade sang, a deadly symphony of steel and vengeance. The raiders fought back, but their crude weapons were no match for his speed and skill. One by one, they fell, their screams swallowed by the forest. When the last man dropped, Fenric stood amidst the carnage, his chest heaving. Blood soaked his hands and spattered his face, but his golden eyes burned with a cold satisfaction. He wiped his blade clean on the fallen raider's tunic, then turned his gaze to the fire. Among the scattered supplies was a map, its edges singed. Fenric picked it up, his sharp eyes scanning the markings. It showed the raiders' route, a path that led directly to the stronghold of their leader, a warlord only known as Vargan the Flame. He folded the map and tucked it into his belt. The stronghold loomed on the horizon, as the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of red and gold. Fenric had traveled through the night, his supernatural endurance carrying him far beyond the limits of a mortal man. The gates of the fortress were massive, built to withstand an army, but Fenric was no army. He was an avatar of justice. He approached the gates under the cover of darkness, scaling the stone walls with the agility of a wolf on the hunt. The guards never saw him coming. By the time he slipped into the heart of the fortress, the sun had risen, casting long shadows across the blood-stained courtyard. Vargan the Flame sat upon a throne of iron and bone, his hulking frame draped in furs. His red hair and beard seemed to grow like embers, and his eyes were as cruel as the axe he held in his hands. "So, the White Wolf comes to my den," Vargan said, his voice a rumble. "I've heard the stories. They say you're a demon, monster. Let's see if you bleed like a man." Fenric stepped into the light, his silver blade gleaming. The two clashed with a fury that shook the walls. Vargan's axe was a mountain, heavy and relentless, but Fenric danced around it, his movements precise and fluid. He struck with the speed of lightning, his blade biting into Vargan's flesh again and again. But the warlord was no mere brute. He fought with the cunning of a seasoned warrior, forcing Fenric to push himself to the limit. The battle raged on, blood staining the ground as the two titans collided. In the end, it was Fenric who prevailed. With a final desperate strike, he drove his blade through Vargan's chest, piercing the warlord's heart. The giant fell to his knees, his axe slipping from his grasp. "For the villages you burned," Fenric said, his voice cold. "For the lives you destroyed." Vargan's eyes dimmed, and he collapsed, the fire in him finally extinguished. The stronghold silent as Fenric stepped into the morning light. The torches of war had been snuffed out, their smoke carried away on the breeze. But Fenric felt no triumph, no joy. The hunt was his muse, but it left him hollow. He turned his gaze to the horizon, where the rivers flowed, and the shores stretched on forever. There would always be another warlord, another torch to extinguish. His path was endless, a means to an end he could no longer remember. And so, he vanished into the wilderness, a shadow among shadows, leaving only the whispers of the legend behind.